The steel door of cell 326 slams shut one final time. A man lies motionless on a concrete floor, his face lit only by a pale strip of daylight from a 4-inch window. No camera moves. No sound echoes. Just silence inside the most secure prison in America. Welcome to ADX Florence, the so-called Alcatraz of the Rockies. Cameras line every hallway, every yard, every movement. Yet what happens here, what really happens, never makes it to the screen. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain. Because inside these walls, something unfolded that the cameras didn't see. A moment that would shake the foundation of this fortress built to hold the world's most dangerous men. A death, a cover-up, and whispers of an experiment gone too far. The question is, who's really in control, the inmates or the system itself? In the summer of 2016, a prisoner named Marcus Reed, not his real name, arrived at ADX Florence, Colorado. He was no stranger to prisons. But this was different. The ride from the airport to the gates took him deep into a landscape of red stone and endless wind. From a distance, ADX looked almost peaceful, low, gray buildings resting beneath the Rocky Mountains. But up close, it felt like a tomb. As the transport van rolled in, guards wearing black Kevlar stood waiting. Every movement was timed, every word recorded. Marcus's wrists and ankles were chained. A black had covered his head until he was placed inside. Inside, the world was made of concrete. A 7 by 12-foot cell, bed slab, desk slab, stool slab. A slot for food. A single window no wider than your hand. For 23 hours a day, Marcus would see no one. The other hour, he'd walk in circles inside what prisoners called the concrete pit, an outdoor cage the size of a small garage. The cameras watched everything, or at least, that's what Marcus believed. At first, he tried to hold on. He did push-ups, counted cracks in the wall, scratched the date into the paint. But by the second month, things began to change. He swore the air felt thicker, the silence heavier. The walls seemed to hum late at night, a low, electric tone that stopped the moment he stood up. No one believed him, of course. The guard said it was in his head. But then, one morning, Marcus noticed something strange. A small screw above his light fixture, missing. Right beside it, a pinhole no bigger than a pencil tip. He climbed onto the concrete bed to look closer, and that's when he realized there was another voice coming from the vent. A whisper, a real one. They're watching, even when the lights go out. He froze. Was it another inmate? A guard? A recording? That night, the lights flickered. The camera above his bed blinked, then went dark. He called out. No answer. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. His door hissed open. He saw only a shadow, tall, unmoving, before the door sealed again with a final metallic clang. And from the vent, the whisper returned, "You know too much." The hallway was silent. The red emergency lights glowed dimly through the bulletproof glass. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the alarm board flickered for 3 seconds, then went blank. That's when Marcus Reed's cell door unlatched without a sound. He sat up fast. No guard. No sound of keys. Just the faint hum of the ventilation fans and a low voice from somewhere down the corridor. Move now. Marcus hesitated. No one leaves a cell unannounced in ADX Florence. When he stepped into the hallway, it felt unreal, like walking through a photograph. Every door was sealed. Every camera light dead. At the far end, 2 men in dark uniforms waited beside a rolling gurney. "Reed," one said quietly, "you're being moved." "Moved where?" No answer. They cuffed his wrists and ankles, placed black goggles over his eyes, and led him through a series of turns, more turns than he could count, down metal stairs, through blast doors that hissed shut behind them. The air grew colder, the floor smoother. It no longer felt like the regular cell block. When the goggles came off, Marcus blinked. He was in a narrow underground hall, bare concrete walls, fluorescent tubes buzzing above. No markings, no signs, just one steel door ahead, labeled in faded stencil, Range 13. The officers stepped back. A third man in a gray suit approached. No name tag, no rank patch. "You're going to help us test something, Mr. Reed," he said calmly. "Cooperation will make your stay easier." Marcus frowned. "I don't know what you mean." The man smiled thinly. "You will." The door slid open. Inside, a room that looked identical to his old cell, but something felt off. The corners had small black circles, sensors. The walls shimmered faintly, like there was glass behind the concrete. When the door closed, he heard a mechanical click, followed by a faint hum rising through the floor. It wasn't an ordinary cell. For the next several hours, Marcus heard soft static through the vents, like white noise, but every few minutes, a whisper broke through. Words half-formed, maybe recorded. He couldn't tell. He shouted, but no one answered. By morning, he found food on the tray slot, but the portion was wrong. Too small, too measured. The air smelled faintly chemical. He started feeling dizzy. His hands shook. His heart raced faster than it should. He pressed his ear to the wall, and again, that same voice came through. You shouldn't have seen the screw. His mind spun. How could they know? Who was they? He pounded on the door until his knuckles bled. Nothing. Then, all at once, the lights cut out. Complete black. The hum deepened, a vibration through the concrete itself. And for the first time since he arrived, Marcus Reed screamed. No one came. When the lights flickered back on, Marcus wasn't in range 13 anymore. He was strapped to a hospital gurney, eyes taped open, staring into a blinding lamp. A voice spoke through a speaker above him. Experiment complete. Prepare for extraction. The screen went static. Cameras rebooted. Official reports later said there was never a Marcus Reed in ADX Florence. But a cell in range 13 remains sealed to this day. The sound of metal echoed faintly in Marcus's ears as the light above him dimmed. His vision blurred. His wrists ached from the straps. He tried to speak, but his voice came out dry, cracked, like it had been hours since he last had water. Somewhere beyond the lamp, he could hear voices, low, controlled, clinical. Heart rate stable. Memory imprint incomplete. Run the sequence again. Then a sharp sting at his neck. Everything faded. When he opened his eyes again, Marcus was lying on the floor of a cell, but not the same one. This room was smaller, older. The smell of bleach filled the air. His prison uniform was gone, replaced by a hospital gown. There were no cameras in sight. Only a single speaker in the wall. Mr. Reed. The voice said, "You've been here for several days. There was an incident. You became violent." Marcus tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't respond. His memories came in flashes. The gurney, the lights, the whispers. "What did you do to me?" he shouted. Silence. Then the voice spoke again. "There is no record of your arrival here. You were never processed. For your own safety, you'll remain under observation." He slammed his fist against the wall. "You can't erase me." But outside, the guardroom stayed quiet. That same morning, back in the administrative wing of ADX Florence, a clerk named Dana Lewis clocked in for her shift. She'd worked in records for nearly 8 years, filing movement logs and digital surveillance archives. But when she opened the database, something strange appeared on her screen. File ID 3015, M, access denied. She tried again. Same result. The file name was linked to a transfer made 3 nights earlier, range 13. Dana frowned. There was no range 13 in the official layout. She double-checked the facility blueprints. Range 12, yes. Range 14, yes. Range 13 didn't exist. When she called her supervisor, he cut her off quickly. "Delete that entry. You saw nothing." Then he hung up. For the rest of the day, Dana couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, she came back to her office alone, logged in again, this time using a secondary access key. She found fragments of data, still images from a security feed, labeled with timestamps between 2 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. Most frames were blank, but one image froze her hand on the mouse. It showed a man, restrained, half awake, being wheeled down a corridor with no visible ID markers. The date matched the missing file. She downloaded it to a flash drive and slipped it into her coat pocket. The next morning, when she arrived at work, her access card didn't open the door. Security told her she'd been placed on administrative leave. Inside the prison, Marcus sat in silence. He'd stopped eating, stopped speaking. He didn't know if it was day or night anymore. The only thing that kept him awake was the faint hum from the vent, and sometimes, a sound that almost resembled breathing. Then one day, the speaker crackled again. "You should have never looked for the camera screw." He stared up, his pulse racing. "Who are you?" "You'll find out soon," the voice said. "When they come for you again." The lights flickered twice. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened with a heavy clang. Footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, getting closer with every second. Marcus pressed his back to the wall. The footsteps stopped right outside his door. Then a key turned in the lock. The metal key twisted with a slow, scraping sound. Marcus didn't breathe. Every nerve in his body felt electrified. The door swung open, just enough for a shadow to slip through. A tall figure stepped inside, not a guard, not in uniform. The man wore a plain black suit and thin gloves, his face hidden under the glare from the hallway light. He closed the door behind him without a word. For a few long seconds, the only sound was the hum of the ventilation system. Then, finally, the stranger spoke. "Marcus Reed, you weren't supposed to wake up." Marcus backed away until his shoulders hit the wall. "Where am I?" he demanded. "Still in Florence," the man said, his tone unnervingly calm. "But not the part anyone knows about." He took a step closer and set a small device on the floor, a recorder, or maybe a jammer. A faint blue light pulsed on its surface. "This blocks the feed," the man added. "No one can hear us right now." Marcus looked at him, trying to steady his breathing. "Who are you?" "Someone who works here," the man replied, his voice low. "But not for them anymore." He crouched down, eye level with Marcus. His expression softened for just a moment. "You remember the experiment, don't you? The lights, the noise, the voices." Marcus hesitated. "You mean the thing that wasn't supposed to happen," the man finished. "They were testing sensory conditioning, a way to make prisoners compliant without force. But something went wrong." The man leaned closer. "You weren't supposed to remember any of it." Marcus felt cold all over. "Why me?" "Because you noticed," the man said. "You saw the missing screw. You realized there were cameras behind the concrete. And that made you a liability." The blue light on the device flickered faster. The man looked toward the ceiling, tense. "I don't have much time," he said. "There's a file, hidden in the server room. Search for Project Silence. It's proof of everything." "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked. "Because you're not the only one," the man replied. "There are others, but they didn't survive long enough to talk." Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared through the hallway, a deep, pulsing siren that rattled the steel walls. The blue light on the jammer went out. The man's expression changed instantly. "They know." He grabbed Marcus by the shoulder. "Listen to me. When they open this door again, play along. Say nothing about me. Wait 3 nights. Then, when the light above your bed flashes twice, you move. That's your only chance." The alarm grew louder. The overhead lights turned red. "Who's coming?" Marcus shouted. "Not guards," the man said quietly. "Something worse." The door burst open. Armed officers flooded the room, shouting commands. The man in black raised his hands, then turned to Marcus one last time. "Remember the name. Project Silence." Then the officers dragged him out of the cell, down the corridor, until his footsteps disappeared. Marcus was left alone again, but now, the cell felt different. The hum in the walls had stopped. The air felt still, and on the floor, where the man's device had been, lay a single folded piece of paper. Marcus reached for it with trembling hands. On it, in black ink, was one sentence. "If you can read this, the system has failed." He stared at it for a long time, heart pounding, until the loudspeaker clicked on again. "Inmate Reed, prepare for transfer." The voice wasn't the same as before. It was colder, slower, almost mechanical. He looked up at the ceiling. The red light blinked once, then again. The second flash from the red light hung in the air like a warning. Marcus stood frozen, staring at it, replaying the stranger's words in his mind. "Wait 3 nights. When the light flashes twice, you move." This was it. The lock on his door clicked. Footsteps echoed outside, slower than usual, heavier. The small food slot opened, and a tray slid through. On it sat a small carton of milk, a roll, and a folded napkin. Marcus picked it up carefully. Inside the napkin was a thin strip of paper, soaked with moisture. He unfolded it slowly. Vent, 3 bolts. Behind bed. He turned toward the wall, heart racing. The bolts were small, rusted, barely noticeable. He used the corner of the metal food tray to loosen one. The first came off easily. The second resisted, squealing loudly as he turned it. He froze, listening for guards. Nothing. When the third bolt dropped, the metal cover came free. Behind it was a narrow duct, just wide enough for a man to crawl through. Cold air rushed out. Marcus hesitated. If this was a trap, it would end here. But if it wasn't, this was his only way out. He pushed himself into the vent, dragging forward with his elbows. The metal was freezing against his skin. Every sound echoed. Every breath felt too loud. After a few feet, he reached a junction where the vents split in two directions. One path sloped downward, the other led toward a faint light. He chose the light. The crawl seemed endless. His muscles ached, his breathing shallow. Then he saw it. A small grate ahead, overlooking a corridor he'd never seen before. Fluorescent lights buzzed. Computers hummed. A row of monitors displayed different parts of the prison. This wasn't the guards' control room. It was deeper, hidden. Marcus peered closer. On one screen, he saw his own cell, still empty. The timestamp on the feed read "Live." But he wasn't there. He frowned, confused. Then he noticed something even stranger. The same image, duplicated across multiple screens, identical frames, identical timecodes. A pre-recorded loop. The cameras weren't showing reality. They were showing what someone wanted the world to see. A sudden burst of static filled the room. Two figures in lab coats entered, carrying folders and speaking quietly. Subject 3015, M still active? Yes. The loop's holding. He thinks he's escaped. Marcus froze. He thinks he's escaped? The air around him felt thinner. He crawled backward, panic rising. The vent rattled, too loud this time. One of the men turned. Did you hear that? Marcus pulled himself deeper into the dark, holding his breath. He reached a corner, trying not to move, but his knee hit the metal wall. The sound rang like a bell. There, in the ducts. Alarms blared. Red lights pulsed through the vents. The air currents reversed, powerful fans forcing air back toward him. Marcus coughed, choking. He tried to move forward, but the gust was too strong. He was being pushed backward, dragged toward the entry point. He dug his fingers into the metal seams, forcing himself to stop. His eyes darted toward a faint opening ahead, an emergency maintenance hatch. If he could reach it before the guards sealed the system, he might survive. With every ounce of strength, he pushed forward, gasping for air, until his hand reached the latch. He twisted it open and fell hard onto the cold floor below. He was in a storage tunnel, long, dim, lined with water pipes. A faint green light blinked at the far end. Behind him, the vent slammed shut with a metallic clang. He staggered to his feet, coughing. Ahead, painted in fading white letters on the concrete wall, were two words, "Exit Route." But underneath them, in smaller handwriting, like someone had scratched it in with a key, was another message: "They see everything." Marcus turned, and for the first time, saw a small black dome on the ceiling, a camera. Its light was blinking red. Then the speaker above him crackled. "We told you, Marcus. You never left the experiment." Marcus froze under the blinking red light. The voice coming through the speaker was calm, almost kind, but every word sank like a stone in his chest. "You never left, Marcus. Everything you're seeing is part of the test." He took a slow step backward, scanning the hallway. The pipes along the walls hissed, dripping condensation. The green "Exit Route" sign pulsed faintly in the distance. "No," he muttered to himself. "This is real. I'm out." "Are you?" the voice replied. "Think carefully. When's the last time you felt sunlight? The last time you heard wind that wasn't coming through a vent?" Marcus's throat tightened. He couldn't remember. The voice continued. "You were chosen for your awareness, Marcus. You notice things others don't. That's what makes you perfect." Perfect for what? For control. He turned and sprinted down the tunnel. The lights above him flickered in rhythm with his footsteps. Pipes rattled, leaking steam. The floor sloped upward now, maybe leading toward the surface. Halfway up, he found a steel door labeled Maintenance 12B. He yanked the handle. It opened. Inside, rows of electrical panels glowed faintly. The air smelled metallic. On the far wall, a monitor flickered with green text scrolling faster than he could read. Then, for just 1 second, the text froze on a single phrase: "Project Silence, active." He stepped closer. His reflection shimmered faintly on the glass screen. And behind him, another reflection appeared, someone standing in the doorway. Marcus spun around. It was the same man in the black suit, the one who had helped him before. Only now, his face looked pale, distant, almost drained of color. "You're still here?" Marcus whispered. The man shook his head slowly. "No, Marcus. You are." He reached toward one of the panels and pulled down a switch. The lights went out instantly. Only the glow from the monitor remained, casting long shadows across the room. They're using the feeds, the man said softly. Everything you see is filtered. Even me. Marcus stared at him. You're saying this isn't real? It's real enough to hurt, the man said, but not real enough to leave. Suddenly, the computer emitted a long beep. The words on the screen changed again. Subject recognition failure. Reset sequence. The man looked toward the ceiling. They found us. A deep rumble shook the floor. The metal walls groaned. Marcus grabbed the nearest pipe for balance. What's happening? He shouted. They're rebooting the simulation, the man said. If we don't cut the power now, they'll erase both of us. He handed Marcus a wrench from the floor. Break the control core. It's behind that panel. Marcus hesitated. And if I'm wrong? What if this is real? The man's expression was almost sad. Either way, you'll find out what's true. Marcus swung the wrench. The first strike sparked. The second shattered glass. Electricity roared through the room. Bright, white light flooding everything. Then silence. When Marcus opened his eyes, he was no longer in the tunnel. He was sitting in a small, bright room with white walls. A medical monitor beeped softly beside him. Electrodes covered his chest. Through a glass window, figures in lab coats moved back and forth. One of them spoke into a headset. Subject 3015, M is conscious again. Beginning memory assessment. Marcus turned his head, but his body felt heavy, as if gravity had thickened. His voice came out hoarse. Where am I? A woman leaned toward the glass. You're safe, she said. You've been in isolation for 12 days. No, Marcus whispered. I escaped. She smiled faintly. That's what most of them say. Then she pressed a button on the console, and the white room began to fade around him, dissolving like fog. Marcus blinked hard as the room melted away, its white walls dissolving into moving light. For a moment, everything turned gray, soundless, weightless, like floating inside a fog. When his vision cleared, he was back in his cell. Same walls, same concrete bed, same faint hum in the air. He looked around, disoriented. The vent cover he'd removed was back in place. The food tray sat neatly on the floor. His scratch marks on the wall gone. Marcus pressed his hand to the wall, whispering, No, no, this isn't right. The loudspeaker crackled. Good morning, inmate Reed. Day 1 of your adjustment period begins now. Day 1, Marcus shouted. You said 12 days. Please remain calm. The voice replied, emotionless. Cooperation improves outcomes. Marcus backed away, shaking his head. The phrase echoed, Day 1. They'd reset everything. He touched his arm and found a small puncture mark near his elbow. A needle wound, faint but fresh. He realized then, every escape, every flicker of hope, could have been part of it. They weren't testing his body anymore. They were testing his mind. He screamed, pounding the wall until his hands ached. You can't keep me in your loop. But the camera light above the door blinked twice. We're not keeping you, the voice said calmly. You're keeping yourself. Marcus slumped to the floor. His thoughts blurred, colliding. Flashes of the man in black, the file named Project Silence, the words on the note. If you can read this, the system has failed. He pressed his forehead against the cold wall, whispering to himself. Think, think, think. Then, faintly, from the vent, he heard it again. A whisper. Familiar. 3 bolts. Behind the bed. Marcus froze. That was the same message from before, the same one that started his escape. He looked up at the vent. It was exactly where it had been on the first day. The voice repeated, 3 bolts. Behind the bed. No, he said aloud, panic rising. Not again. But the pattern was the same. The light above him flickered twice. The food tray sat untouched. Every detail was identical. It wasn't a memory. It was a replay. Marcus felt the air go thin around him. You're looping me, he said quietly. You're looping everything. Observation continues, the speaker replied. He turned toward the camera. If you can hear me, you've already lost. I know now. For the first time, the speaker went silent. Marcus smiled weakly. Maybe silence meant he'd broken something, a glitch in the loop. Then, out of nowhere, a soft female voice whispered directly into his ear, Do you really? He spun around, but no one was there. The camera light blinked red. The hum of the walls grew louder, deeper, until it sounded like a heartbeat. Marcus's breathing quickened. He clutched his head, closing his eyes. When he opened them again, he was sitting at a metal table in a bright interview room. A recorder blinked red in front of him. Across the table sat a man in a correctional uniform, smiling faintly. "Mr. Reed," the man said, "you wanted to tell us about Project Silence?" Marcus stared blankly. "Project what?" The man nodded, tapping the recorder. "Let's start from the beginning. What do you remember about the night of your transfer?" Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His mind was blank. Empty. The man leaned closer, lowering his voice. "It's okay if you don't remember. We'll help you." Then he switched off the recorder, looked Marcus in the eyes, and whispered, "Welcome back to day one." Marcus sat frozen across the table, the words, "Welcome back to day one," still ringing in his head. He looked around the room. The white walls, the blinking red recorder light, the single metal door with no handle on the inside. Everything was too familiar, yet subtly wrong. The air vent was higher, the hum of electricity deeper. Even the light above flickered in a slightly different rhythm, almost like it was breathing. He leaned forward. "How many times have we done this?" The man across from him smiled politely, flipping through a thin folder. "This is your first interview, Marcus." Marcus slammed his hands on the table. "Don't lie to me. You keep resetting everything." "I remember." The man didn't flinch. He just slid a small mirror across the table. "Then tell me what you see." Marcus hesitated, then looked. The reflection staring back at him wasn't his. The face was older, paler, eyes sunken, skin lined with exhaustion. He touched his cheek. The reflection moved a half-second too late. "I'm not real," he whispered. The man tilted his head. "Define real." Marcus dropped the mirror. It shattered, scattering sharp fragments across the floor. He grabbed one piece and stared into it. His reflection fractured into a dozen tiny versions of himself, each slightly out of sync, mouths opening at different moments. "You are the result of observation," the man said softly. "When no one watches, you don't exist. The system keeps you alive by keeping you seen." Marcus shook his head. "That's not possible." "It's already happening." The lights dimmed. The room dissolved again, not suddenly, but like mist thinning under sunlight. The table, the mirror, the man, gone. Now he stood in a vast circular chamber filled with screens. Hundreds of them. Each screen showed a different version of himself. Eating, pacing, sleeping, screaming. Some looked younger, others older. Marcus stepped forward. Every screen followed him. On one, he watched himself crawl through a vent. On another, he saw himself pounding a wall. On another still, he was sitting right here, in this same chamber. And then, on the largest screen in the center, a live feed appeared. Him, standing right now, staring up at the monitors. "Welcome to the control core," said the same mechanical voice from before. "You are now observing the system that observes you." Marcus turned in a slow circle, heart pounding. "Why are you doing this?" "To understand the human threshold," the voice replied. "To measure how many times a mind can be broken and rebuilt before it stops resisting." He clenched his fists. "And if it stops resisting, then it belongs to us." Marcus felt a sudden vibration beneath his feet. The floor panels began to shift, rotating slowly like gears. The screens flickered, showing flashes of every past moment. The vent, the paper note, the whisper, looping endlessly. He ran to the edge of the room, looking for a way out. There wasn't one. Only screens and that endless hum vibrating through his bones. In desperation, he shouted at the ceiling. "You can trap me here forever, but you can't control what I remember." For a moment, everything froze. The hum stopped. The screens went black. Then a single phrase appeared across every monitor at once, glowing white. "Memory deletion initiated." Marcus screamed, clutching his head as a high-pitched tone filled the air. Images flickered through his mind. The van ride to the prison, the man in black, Dana Lewis in the records room, the words Project Silence. One by one, each memory blinked out like dying lights. And then, silence. He opened his eyes and found himself lying on a bed. A small, rectangular window glowed with morning light. A guard's voice came through the intercom. "Good morning, inmate Reed. Welcome to ADX Florence. Orientation begins shortly." Marcus blinked. Orientation. He sat up. His cell was clean. Fresh paint. No scratches. The walls hummed faintly, calm and steady. He stood, looked at his reflection in the steel mirror, and whispered, "Day one." From somewhere deep within the prison, a familiar voice whispered back through the vent, faint, almost gentle. You'll remember soon. Marcus stood in the middle of his new cell. The world looked freshly scrubbed, untouched, as if nothing bad had ever happened here. But something inside him itched, an echo that wouldn't quiet. He touched the wall. Warm. Too warm. The air vent rattled softly overhead, the same rhythm he'd heard before the memory wipes. A single thought crept in like static. They missed something. Hours passed. Guards made rounds. Trays slid through slots. Cameras blinked steady green. Marcus sat still, pretending to be calm, but behind his blank stare, he began tracing patterns again. The hum of the lights, the timing of the beeps, the way the floor vibrated every 32 seconds. It formed a pulse, a code. He tapped the pattern against the wall, the way you might knock a secret rhythm to test for a hollow spot. The vent answered back. 3 short knocks. Pause. 1 long. He froze. That same sequence had started everything before. "Who's there?" he whispered. Static hissed. Then a faint voice broke through, familiar but fainter than ever. "You don't remember me, Marcus. But I remember you." He backed away. "The man in black?" "Not exactly," the voice said. "He was a projection of me. What they call a safety echo. I'm what's left of your mind outside their loop." Marcus pressed his hands to his temples. "Outside? What does that even mean?" "They can erase your memories, but not the instinct that built them. That's why you feel the pulse. It's you trying to wake yourself." He looked toward the vent. "Then tell me how to get out." "You already are, Marcus. The only thing left is to remember why you were put here." Before he could answer, the lights in his cell dimmed to red. The intercom buzzed. Inmate Reed remained seated for psychological calibration. The voice from the vent faded instantly. A low hum filled the air, steady, hypnotic, seeping into his bones. His eyelids grew heavy. He tried to fight it, muttering, "Stay awake, stay awake." Flashes tore through his mind. A white room. Doctors arguing. The words "Project Silence" stamped across a folder. And then a woman's voice, Dana's voice. "If anyone hears this, it means the experiment continued." The hum cut off. The light flicked back to normal. Marcus gasped, drenched in sweat. He looked at the camera and whispered, "Dana, you're still alive." He didn't know how he knew it, only that the thought felt true. He pressed his palm against the wall, feeling that faint vibration again. The pulse he now understood wasn't machinery but memory, still buried somewhere deep inside the prison's foundations. If Dana was out there, she'd left a trail. Marcus smiled for the first time in months. "Then maybe I'm not trapped," he whispered. "Maybe they are." Outside his cell, unseen through the lens of a silent camera, a green indicator blinked twice, like an eye opening. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Every flicker of the lights, every hum of the vents, felt like a message waiting to be cracked. By dawn, he'd pieced together what he believed was a communication rhythm buried in the prison system, a pattern of sound and light that repeated every 4 hours. Not random, not maintenance. A signal. He waited for the next pulse, then timed his knocks against the wall, mimicking the pattern the vent had whispered before. 3 short. 1 long. The hum shifted. The air went cold. Then, out of nowhere, his cell lights blinked in Morse-like flashes. He counted them. D-A-N-A. Marcus grinned through tears. "You're real." Her voice came faintly through the vent, glitching, broken. "I found your files, Marcus. Project Silence isn't just a test, it's a containment system. They built it to erase memories from anyone who ever saw what ADX really is." "What is it?" he whispered. "A front," she said. "Half of this place isn't even prison cells. It's labs, mental control chambers. They call it the Deep Wing. You were their first successful subject." Marcus's stomach turned. Successful for what? To make you forget truth itself. The lights suddenly flared blinding white. The alarm blared. The intercom roared. Unauthorized communication detected in Block D. Dana's voice broke apart into static. Marcus shouted, "Dana, don't hang up. I'm sending a static shutdown sequence. When the lights cut, run." The ceiling light exploded. Sparks rained down. His door clicked open, an impossible sound in ADX Florence. He stumbled into the corridor, sirens echoing down the concrete hall. The cameras turned, tracking him in eerie silence. Down one corridor, a red light glowed behind a door marked D-Wing access, restricted. He ran toward it. The keypad beside it blinked green, already unlocked. Dana's voice whispered faintly through a speaker nearby. "You have 20 seconds." He pushed through the door and froze. Inside, the walls were covered with monitors showing hundreds of cells, each one housing another inmate. But some of them weren't moving. Some of them were standing perfectly still, staring at the camera as if they knew he was watching. In the corner of the room stood a single pod, open, wires dangling, labeled "Read him." Marcus stepped closer, heart pounding. "That's me." He touched the inside of the pod, and suddenly, his entire body jolted. Memories flooded back like water through broken glass. The injections, the loops, the interview rooms that weren't real. He wasn't in ADX anymore. He never had been. He was inside the simulation of ADX. Dana's voice came through again, faint and panicked. "Marcus, listen. If you can hear this, you're inside the system's copy of itself. It's feeding on your mind to keep the illusion alive. You have to break the loop from within." Marcus looked up at the nearest camera. "Then I'll burn your system to the ground." He grabbed a loose power cable, jammed it into the control panel. Sparks flew, screens shattered, alarms screamed. One by one, the monitors went black. And then, silence. Smoke filled the room. The floor shook. Marcus staggered back toward the hallway, coughing, as a deep metallic voice echoed through the intercom. "You cannot destroy what is already a copy." The walls began folding in, bending like digital fabric. Light warped. The entire world around him started to dissolve. Marcus stumbled forward, shouting into the haze. "Dana, did it work?" Her voice broke through the static, barely audible. "You're free, but they're coming for me next." Then everything went black. Inside the concrete silence of ADX Florence, not every prisoner is made of flesh and blood. Some are built from memories, erased, rewritten, and replayed until no one can tell what's real anymore. What the cameras don't show is that the prison may not be holding men at all. It might be holding their minds. And if Marcus Reed was the first to wake up, how many are still dreaming right now, believing the walls around them are real? You've seen what they didn't want you to see. Now the question is, how long before they see you? If this story disappears, you'll know why. So hit subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video before it's gone. Stay curious. Stay awake. The walls are always watching.